2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15 states, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." Hi, I'm Rico Hill, the host of From Sickness to Health, and this is...
Sickness, blue guy, yada, yada, yada. They get it. Okay, we're gonna settle something right here and now. I've been doing a lot of homework, doing some, research, extensive research. I have thought long and hard about this, and so I've had the team gather your foods and my foods, and today we are going to read some labels, okay?
All right, okay, so I'm going to just read the items, the list on mine, and just for what purpose?
The purpose is, you say, less is better. So we're gonna see which foods have fewer ingredients.
Okay. All right, you want me to go first?
No, the kid goes first. Sugar, enriched flour, wheat flour, niacin, reduced iron, thiamine, mononitrate. Ooh, these cookies sound good. Riboflavin, folic acid. I'm gonna stop right there.
But you could have kept going though, huh?
I could have kept going.
All right. I'll just go to mine now. Fuji apple.
Okay, go on, read the ingredients, the sugars, the fibers, all that.
No. The sugars and the fibers, they all go together. They work together, so you don't have to read any list.
Oh, wait a minute. Switch!
All right. You want to read this one now?
Yes, I do.
Should I go first?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Let's see, cereal, some kind of blueberry cereal. It's got flour, lots of sugar, artificial color, artificial this, flavors, high
and
fructose.
I have a banana. Clearly fewer ingredients.
Wait a minute. So why don't you just eat those instead of the food items that has 100 different ingredients that you always are promoting and can't even pronounce?
Maybe I will.
Okay then.
I mean, I won't. Wait, what just happened?
Are you sure you thought this whole thing through? Did you think, all the extensive research? Okay, whatever. Look, today we're going to talk about food labels and how you can become an educated consumer. Roll it. Good research.
This isn't over.
Thank you so much for joining us here in the studio of From Sickness to Health. You're going to be so glad that you are sticking around. We have a wonderful program for you today. We're going to be talking about something that I'm excited about, and I know that you're excited about it too. We're going to talk about food. Not just food, though. We're going to talk about food labeling so that you can be an educated consumer. Now, before we get into the discussion, which is going to be lively, you're going to enjoy our guest, let's say hello to our friend, our co-host, Sickness. What do you got going on?
Why, hello, Rico. I'm here at the Food Label Factory, where our motto is, if you can't pronounce it, let's announce it. So my goal today is overwhelm the people, just like this. Look at all those labels coming at you. You're going to see.
All right, we'll get back to you. I know you're going to go somewhere, maybe in the science lab somewhere, and cook up something. But in the meantime, let's say hello to our guest. We're excited about our guest today. We have with us Dr. Yvonne Lewis, who is a naturopathic doctor, but also the general manager of this network. And we're so happy for you to be with us to give us your insights.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
We're excited. We're excited. And also we have with us Dr. Thomas Jackson, who's been on the program before. He is a doctor of natural health sciences, but also the head of the ministry, Meat Ministry in Huntington, Tennessee. He's going to talk to us more about that and how they deal with this whole food thing. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And with him, his bride by his side. I don't think he goes anywhere without her, and he shouldn't. He's here with his lovely wife, Dr. Laverne Jackson. She is a doctor of nutritional sciences. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, as we get started here, I want to just sort of set the tone. Food has changed. Food has changed so much that we have to label it. But is this a good thing? Is it a good thing to label our food? Just a little history on food. Food used to be simple. It came right from the ground. Is that right?
That's right.
From the garden.
Straight from the garden. And you didn't need any labels. We find that toward the end of the 1700s, something dramatic happened to our food. It began to change. Processed food began to be produced. It was a man by the name of Nicholas Appert. He was commissioned by Napoleon Bonaparte to preserve meat while the troops were in battle. And this began bottling food. Then you had a man by the name of Peter Durant. He was an Englishman, and he began to can bottles, or put a protective tin can around bottles, and then canning was born in 1821. And then we see that William Underwood, he was someone who began to preserve a lot of the fruits and vegetables, frozen fruits and vegetables, and we had a whole paradigm shift in the way that we treated our food. And now it is necessary to label those foods, labels such as fat-free, sugar-free, but is it fact-free?
Come on now.
So now that's where we want to start today. What's going on with the labeling? How can we trust them? What's all the wording and the things that we can't pronounce?
Mercy.
You know, when you say labeling, for what purpose do they do that? Number one, since it started with additives and preservatives, it was supposed to be to protect the consumer and also to put restriction upon those who was manufacturing food from putting adulterated ingredients into the product. So the idea was to protect the consumer and to prevent any adulterated ingredients from going into the product. Whether that worked or not, we see the results today is not.
It has not. In fact, we find that during the 1970s, there was so much fat and salt in the food, and they began to, the government actually commissioned the FDA to begin to do something because the food was just causing so much disease and so much sickness that, did you hear that? Sickness?
Sickness.
So much sickness that there had to be a change in the way that we were labeling food, as you just pointed out, Dr. Jackson. And then they got together in closed doors and boardrooms, and they decided, what are we going to do? And they found a way to begin to use more salt.
Oh dear.
Less fat, but more salt and more sugar. In fact, this has been the bane of our existence. Added sugars and lots of fat. So when we're looking at labels, let's look at some of this as we're talking about this.
Right. You know, one of the things, Rico, that we really need to look at is the fact that when people go into stores, they're just looking at the packaging, but not reading the labels. So really not knowing what they're getting. So people just assume that since it's in the store, I can eat it. So they see something, and packaging, there's a lot of subliminal messaging in packaging. People, it's a psychology behind on Madison Avenue, you know, the commercials and all that. There's a psychology behind the food packaging. So they'll package it in certain colors and all that, drawing people's attention to it. When they draw your attention to it, they have certain things at eye level or just below at children's eye level. So the kids will take it, dump it into the cart, and the parents don't even know what they're getting because they're not reading the labels.
And
But you know, it can be argued that, you know, some of it's not even really food, is it?
No, it's not food.
We're going to go ahead and make that statement, and we're going to make a rule. We're going to set a rule right now. Don't ever believe anything on the front of a box. It's all marketing. It's all marketing. Now, having come from a marketing and television background, I saw so much of how to take those cereal boxes. It must be important. It must make a lot of money because they devote an entire aisle to them.
Absolutely.
Right? And you're right about that. They put things eye level, especially for the kids.
That's children.
And the worst ones with the most sugar are at eye level for the young kids. It's all a strategy, and we have to be aware of that. But let's check in real quick. I know you got something, Dr. Jackson, you want to add to this. We're going to come to you in a second. But let's go check in with Sickness and see where he is. Where are you, Sickness?
Thank you, Rico. You'd expect to find me in a kitchen, but today I'm in a laboratory because I'm here with professionals and we've been doing some research, really seeing what's going on with food. And the amazing thing is that science is showing that science has figured a way to make food taste better and sweeter. Let's take cereal, for example. Now, most people think cereal's pretty healthy, but you and I know different. It's chock full of sugar and replacement berries. So somebody's walking down the aisle and they see that beautiful picture of what looks like a blueberry right on the box of cereal. But it's not a blueberry. See, this is the genius of science. It's a replacement berry, and these berries last 100 years. That's right, and they're just as sweet. So let's leave the food to the scientists, because people aren't reading labels anyway. Stop worrying about it. Back to you, Rico.
Yeah.
I think the suggestion was that we just leave it to the scientists.
That's right.
Should we just leave it to the scientists?
You know, this is definitely how we see the mindset has changed, where we have total confidence within science and those who control our food industry. And so it's like the blind leading the blind. And so you find, like in Deuteronomy chapter 4, there's a statement, verse 2, Deuteronomy chapter 4, and it's very interesting that sickness is in the laboratory. And in Deuteronomy chapter 4, we're talking about food labeling and preservatives and additives. And in verse 2, notice what the great chemist said. The chief chemist.
The chief chemist.
God
the master
himself,
scientist.
The master scientist.
The supreme scientist.
He
Go ahead.
warns us here. He warns us. He says here in verse 2, you shall not add unto the word which I command you. Then he says, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. Now, add or take away. Now, even in the turn of the century, they had a condition called beriberi.
What was that?
Beriberi, B-E-R-I, and it affected the whole physiological makeup of people, bones problem, etc. And the reason they ended with beriberi is the fact that they began to process the foods, okay? And they stripped the grains, whole grains, of 81-something nutrients. You have the germ, you have the endosperm, you have the bran. So you remove the bran, and you feed the bran to the animals. You take the germ, you remove 81 nutrients, you got an endosperm, so now you got a white product. So you're losing nutrients. So you end up with a deficiency called beriberi, which is a result of thiamine. So what they did in the laboratory, instead of giving the whole food, they went into the laboratory and they add synthetic thiamine to it. So every time you look at a product on the counter or from your store, white flour, you see thiamine, B1 added. Now, Rico, if you had $20 in your pocket, and I reached out and took the $20 out and put 10 back, would you feel like you've been enriched or ripped off?
Sickness would be okay with that, but I wouldn't.
No. So you're going to take 81 nutrients, put 10 back synthetically, then label it, it's okay. Now you predispose people to allergies and sinus and asthma because of the synthetic.
Rico, I'd like to comment on that.
Okay,
We thought he would, didn't we?
I thought he would.
Yes, go ahead.
You see, we live in an advanced age, and we just worked on an ingredient here called, you should have known better, monoxide amine, number 5. And, you know, I really feel like things like this, we need to leave to the scientists, because we have drugs now that will treat allergies. So Dr. Jackson doesn't have to be concerned. One step ahead, that's where science is.
So in other words, according to him, if we just go ahead and have the synthetic thiamine, and it leads
Or
to
other additives.
or other additives, and there are a lot of those,
That's right.
we get sick, we come down with some debilitating disease or some annoying disease or situation like allergies, just go get a drug.
Just go to drug.
We could talk about that, but we're just going to go ahead and dismiss that. Because
dismiss that.
Who wants to deal with that, right?
That's right.
Now, you talked about additives, talking about the supreme scientists. What kind of additives do we have in this beautiful red pepper?
You know, the Bible says in Matthew 19:6, what God has joined together, let no man tear asunder.
Come on.
And I remember on one previous show, Dr. Lewis mentioned that even in a tomato, you talk about 10,000
Phytochemicals.
phytochemicals.
That's right.
Now, synergistically put together that God did, and like you said, it's in, there's a commercial that says, it's in here. It's in there. And you don't have to read it. Right. The color speaks for itself. And so the additive, yes, there's no additives in here. It's the fact that this is the way it is made up. The very constituency of this food is derived from a creator who loves us and who's concerned, listen to this, who's concerned about our life and not chef life.
Come on.
I don't know, did you get that one?
I heard what you said, and I'll even add something to that.
Yeah.
I always like to tell people, the longer its shelf life, the shorter yours.
That's
Is that
right.
true?
That's true.
So we find that people go into a grocery store and they go to the center aisles where things are canned, things are boxed, things are in bags, things have been highly processed. And we're seeing that if it's in something that you've got to rip open with some scissors or a blade and struggle to open it up, it's probably something you shouldn't put in your body.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's true.
And we find that people avoid going to the outer part of the store.
That's something.
Right?
That's right.
And especially in some of our communities, like the African American community,
That's
where
right.
we are short on
Right.
our fruits and vegetables, our
Right.
produce and so forth,
Right.
but instead tend to go to those things that are very, very simple and so-called, quote unquote, convenient. But they're not very convenient, are they?
No, they're not. They're not. Because when you look at the conditions that we're going to suffer with as a result of this convenience, then it's not convenient.
Okay, so let's, on a typical program, I've seen it on different news programs, they'll take you to the nutritional facts that are found on various things here, and they'll tell you how to read them, and it's like you have to do multiplication, you've got to do division, you've got to divide it all up and figure out how many calories and all these different things. How can we simplify this? I'll tell you where we're going. We're going to go to the conclusion that it's much easier to have less ingredients. The less you have to read, the less you have to pronounce, the better you are. So that's where we're going,
Absolutely.
Yes.
right?
That's right.
If you have to go to a box to eat, if you're eating out of boxes, there's a problem. Because you have to read what's in there. You need to know what you're getting, first of all. But God has given us, in these fresh fruits and vegetables, everything that's bioavailable. Our bodies don't have to do a whole bunch of changing and all that to eat these. Whereas with this, there are things that are not pronounceable. If you can't pronounce it, it should not go into
If you
your
have
body.
to go, not to cut, if you had to go
Yeah.
and get a dictionary,
That's right.
and then begin to read and find out, then something is wrong with
That's
that picture.
right.
Well, somebody's looking at this and they're saying,
what?
What's the problem? It tastes good. It tastes really good.
Yeah.
And this says, and watch this, let's see if you all remember what I said, what the rule is. It says here, smile, it's the cheesiest, right? That's marketing. You got to remember that they'll put anything on the cover of the box or bag to draw you in. And some people buy it.
Oh, yes.
Not just purchase it, but they buy into it,
Right.
and they'll even say it back to you.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
That means that something has happened psychologically, as you mentioned
That's
in the
right.
beginning, right? But they'll look here, and in fact, I said they'll look here,
Yes.
but that's not quite true.
That's right.
Rico, that's exactly right. Let me comment on that, please, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Okay, you see, I'm going to steal a play from you on this one. There are lots of Christians that don't read their Bibles, but take the pastor's word for it. So learning how they do that, I'd like to say, you can trust me with your health. Don't read the labels, just like you don't read the Bible.
You think you're quite smart, don't you?
Yeah.
So he just raised an interesting
He
point.
raised an interesting question.
People aren't reading it, and they're trusting the scientists. They're trusting, and he draws an analogy that we should talk about, and that is a lot of people, they're told what's in here. They don't pick it up themselves, right? They will pick it up, take it with them to church, but they don't necessarily read it themselves. Somebody
right.
else is feeding them the information, just like the, Madison Avenue, who does all the advertising and
Avenue.
marketing and so forth. They're like the pastor. They're feeding people
Come on.
information,
Come on.
and they're not actually looking at what's really going on.
That's right. And that creates spiritual sickness as well as physical sickness.
So when
Because
you're not actually, as we started out with the Word of God, we shared the scripture, study to show thyself approved. Study to show thyself approved. So
right.
are we making application to even our food and
That's
our
right.
health?
That's right.
We are making application to our food and health, and that we should actually be studying to show ourselves approved unto God, because God says in Romans chapter 12 that we are to present our bodies a living sacrifice. That means a healthy sacrifice. Can we have our bodies be a living sacrifice if we are not picking up things and not understanding what it is we are eating?
Yes, yes. Because the conditions that we're suffering with, like for instance, the attitude.
I think you missed the question. I said, can our bodies be a living sacrifice if we are picking this up, not understanding? Okay, I wanted to make sure.
No, because the conditions that we're going to suffer with is going to affect that.
And our bodies will be a unhealthy,
That's right.
dying
That's right.
sacrifice.
That's
And that's not what we want.
No,
not what we
no,
want.
no.
I think it has to be understood that everything that we take into the body has an effect,
That's right.
whether it's a negative effect or a positive effect on the cell. We go down to
right.
the cellular level where every cell responds to what we put in. The body is made up of all of these trillions of cells, like 60 trillion cells. And what we eat, that's all the cells have to work with.
That's right.
What we eat. It makes our blood, the blood takes the nutrients and oxygen to the cells. So if we don't have food and we're eating junk and chemicals, that's how the body is going to respond to that, because it's not being fed. It's going to starve. So we find people that are overly fed and malnourished.
Wow. Now you just raised a few excellent points. You talked about chemicals. And when we're talking about processed foods, we're talking about foods that are very, very high in chemicals. When we're talking about things that you cannot pronounce and you have to read a full paragraph of things, even when it comes down to your breads.
Yeah.
You'll find that it blew my mind when I picked up a loaf of bread, and there was one that just had just about 6 ingredients, but then I saw another that had about 50 ingredients. Now I said, what's so special about that bread over the one that just had the fewer ingredients? And it was just a lot of chemicals, things that really I couldn't pronounce, to be quite honest with you. So we're seeing that there's a lot of chemicals in processed foods, and that you talked about the cellular level. People don't fully understand this, but what we eat, we're not feeding our stomach, are we?
That's
We're
right.
really feeding
Those
our
cells.
cells.
That's right.
If we could just understand that point, if we could understand that when we are eating, that the food that goes in is not just to make our stomachs feel good, but it's actually feeding us on the cellular level, and everything depends on how happy and how well those cells are. Is that right?
That's correct. And if you think about what happens after that food goes in, the whole purpose is the life of the flesh is in the blood. So the foods that we eat will produce blood, and that blood is going to nourish our body, cleanse our body. But do you know, if the brain does not get good, pure blood, we will not be able to hear the words that God is going to speak to us to change our lives.
And then, oh, wow. So you're saying that if your blood is not good, it doesn't feed the brain, because the circulation is taking
Correct.
that nutrition up to our brains.
That's right.
And if it's not good nutrition, then we can't even hear the voice of God. So when we go and someone says, I'm going to tell you what this says, and I'm going to tell you how to worship and when to worship and all that, we might not be able to process because of what we're eating.
That's
and then we
correct.
accept whatever they say, just like what's on this box.
That's correct.
Now, I like what you said, Dr. Jackson. You mentioned that what we eat, and you said it too, what we eat actually makes blood. If you eat this beautiful red pepper, it goes in and it makes blood. Is that right?
That's right.
If you pick up a candy bar, I won't say what type, but if you pick up one of those, I'm not sure what it makes, except maybe make you sick. Our time is gone. This has been a very lively discussion. Tune in another time when we have to pick up this discussion again. There's so much more that we can cover. But in the meantime, don't worry so much about what you read on a box. Instead, pick up something that has no labels at all.
Amen. And
you be healthy eating that. We'll see you next time. The wisdom of Solomon comes through for us in Proverbs 30:7-8. 2 things have I required of thee, deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? The wise man Solomon brings something very important to light. First, that there is a food that is convenient for us. That word convenient isn't the kind of convenience we think of like packaged food or processed food from a store, but packaged from the very hand of God. You see, it means prescribed. An apple is also convenient, and it is certainly prescribed by God. Secondly, Solomon also points out that we can eat a type of food that makes us so full, although it's empty, to the extent that we will forget God. Now, do we really want to forget God?
Thank you, Rico. That was moving.
Thank you.
Now, here's your bag with all your stuff in it.
Wait a minute. I thought we settled this.
Oh, we've settled the fact that according to scientific data, you don't know what you're talking about until you've had one of these babies. I've had this one since 1992. It's aged to perfection. I replaced all your convenient fruit with some of these babies.
Man, you don't give up, do you? Look, friends, if God wanted us to have these, he would have placed them in the garden. You'll never see one of these hanging from a tree. Just remember 3 John 2. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou would prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. I'm Rico Hill.
I'm Sickness. This is so good.
Maranatha.
No cameras. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Oh no. Oh no. I think something just blew up in my stomach. Oh, wrong year. Oh, a little too aged. Oh.